Okay, so we're up here in Moonta, South Australia, and we're working on conserving some of these masonry structures that are part of the old copper mining process here. And one of the most interesting and really important things we need to do is select the right mortar for the right building. So what we've done in consultation with the project architect and engineer is taken some samples on different locations in the buildings and the surrounding structures. So we've got the engine house here and the boiler houses. There's an original boiler house and then two secondary additions next to it. Over here we can actually see one of the old boilers. This engine used to run and dewater the mines along this line of load. It's a really important thing. This engine probably ran non-stop for over 60 years. The engine's now been decommissioned, but we're now looking to restore and conserve the masonry around it. And you can see the chimney in the background. Several samples were taken of both bedding mortar and pointing mortars. They were then analysed by a nationally accredited laboratory here in South Australia. From that we were able to determine the aggregate sizes, the types of sand and any other additives that were in the mortars. And from there we are able to search locally for similar materials. We're really looking to match the mortars exactly, because the mortars reflect the time and the types of stone and brick that were used in the structure. So, you know, in a conservation project, it's really important to get that right. So we then put together what we call a mortar board. You can see that here behind me, where we, in consultation with the architects, work out exactly what colour palette we want using those aggregates that were identified in the testing. Then we have an approval process and we put those samples up on the building. And now our team behind us are starting to do some of that pointing work. Okay, so I was talking earlier about the sample selection. Here's an example of what we would call a sample. This is an internal rough coat or scratch coat, as we call it, from inside the engine house behind us. This one was from the brickwork of one of the original boiler house sections. And you can see the aggregate inside. It's really quite prolific. And then this was another section of stone mortar from another section on one of the buildings. So what we've done, again with the help of the analysis, is select a concrete sand which has got quite a coarse and broad aggregate range. With lime mortars it's very important to have breathability, so we want a porous mortar. Concrete sand does that beautifully. We've got a Puna crushing fine here for colour and also aggregate, and you can see some of that red aggregate in this sample here. This is a smelting byproduct from Wallaroo. So there's quite a lot of black in a lot of this, so we're using smelting byproduct, which was identified in the report. And we've also got what we're calling line of load aggregate, which is, if you can look at that closely, you can see a little bit of copper and so forth in there, which is giving that green tinge. So there, that's our raw ingredients. We've got lime at the back. We don't use any cement in our heritage work, and that's how we come up with a lime mortar.